The main focus of my talk tonight, and I was telling some of you, I think we're actually going to get out a little early, although I started 15 minutes late. So you'll at least get out on time. The focus is going to be bar and bat mitzvah. How many have been to a bar or bat mitzvah? How many have become bar or bat mitzvah? Okay. And now I'm going to ask, of those above 50, okay, how many were brought up Jewish? Okay. And did you bar mitzvah? Reform, conservative, Orthodox? Okay. I lost that. One of the things we're going to talk about bar mitzvah in the Reform movement, because if I had people in here above the age of 50, 60, who had grown up in the Reform movement, and I asked if they became bar mitzvah, they probably would have said no. Anyone over the age of 50, 60, really 40, if I asked if they had become bat mitzvah, they would say no. And we'll talk more about that later. All right. So what was, Jewishly especially, and secular education, there was debate early on, right? Some would say yes, Jewish children should learn math and science and all of the secular topics. Others would say no. Why would you say no?
No to which piece?
To learning secular topics.
They want to focus on Judaism.
Focus on your Talmud, focus on your Torah, and the more you learn about the outside world, the more likely you are to, to leave your Jewish world. But as early as our rabbis, and especially you've heard Maimonides, right? Maimonides is not just known for being a Jewish philosopher and legal commentator, right? What is he also known for? He was a physician, right? He knew more about he was brilliant all around, and outside of the Jewish world, he's still known for some of his medical writings and for how advanced they were for the time. And he studied in Arabic, because Arabic was the highest intellectually at that time. Really, with the Enlightenment, was full on. Jews should be learning, and it happened before then. But the Enlightenment was really when we started to see across the board studying all topics. But today we're focusing on Jewish education. Right where it says Suite 13, parenthesis 12. Okay? In the Mishnah, it says, Rabbi Judah ben Tema used to say, at 5 years of age, one should study Bible, Tanakh, right, Torah. At 10, Mishnah. At 13, one should perform the mitzvot. And at 15, one should study Talmud. Okay? So again, looking at a progression, right? You start by learning Torah, then you learn from the rabbis. But the one that's most interesting to me is at 13, one should perform the mitzvot. Okay, what does that mean? And these are things that we really haven't talked about yet. It's really all of the ritual laws, right? We learn, a lot of us in Sunday school learn mitzvah means good deeds, okay? But mitzvot or mitzvah is singular, mitzvot is the plural, and it means commandments. Well, or commandments, but you know the difference between singular and plural. So bar mitzvah means literally son of the commandments, but what it really means is obligated by the commandments. So let's go on to the next text, which will explain it. And I know this is a little confusing because it's things we haven't talked about yet, but this one really will make sense at the end. One should not make children fast at all on Yom Kippur. All right? So one of the mitzvot, one of the commandments of Yom Kippur, which we learned about 2 weeks ago, is not eating. Right? Not eating, not drinking, all of those things we talked about. So one should not make children fast at all on Yom Kippur. However, one should train them a year or two before so that they get used to religious practices. Okay, now we're going to go specifically through fasting, but that principle will look at how children and mitzvot are viewed. Okay? Rav Huna said, at 8 and 9 years, one trains them by hours. Okay? Meaning that you gradually learn how to fast. I remember growing up, and it probably was, well past 13, 14, but it was 2 or 3 o'clock, and I had been fasting, but I started not feeling well, and I remember my dad driving me to get me chicken nuggets. Because I wasn't feeling well, and I felt really bad for him because he was still fasting. But right, so this idea that you fast for a few hours, you fast as long as you can. I also remember a great memory with my brother. We would go home after the children's service, so we would get home at like 4 o'clock, 3:30. So I guess he was driving, he was 16, I was about 11. And I had tried fasting, and I think I had fasted. But we would make cookies for my parents when they got home, and we would eat a little cookie dough. And that was how we would break our fast. But so one should train them a year or two before, so that, where was I? 10 or 11, they must fast. At 8 and 9, one trains them by hours, so you fast a little bit. At 10 and 11 years, they must fast to the end of the day, according to rabbinic ordinance, something called the Rabbanan. In other words, that at that point, at 10 or 11, right, is that what it said? 10 or 11, they have to fast the full 25 hours. But it's a rabbinic commandment. They're still not commanded by the Torah to fast. And then it says at 12, they must fast to the end of the day according to biblical law. So at 12, they are now full-on commanded to fast. Then it says, but this refers to girls. Rabbi Nachman said at 9 and 10, one trains them by hours. At 11 and 12, they must fast to the end of the day according to rabbinic ordinance, not by the Torah. At 13, they must fast to the end of the day according to biblical law. This refers to boys. From this paragraph, we're going to get the full concept of bar and bat mitzvah, not as it relates to education, but as it relates to practice. Okay? Up until a child turns, and this is in the traditional world, right? Up until a girl turns 12 and a boy turns 13. Okay, up until that point, they are not ritually bound to the commandments. So if a 7-year-old eats a bacon cheeseburger, right, they have not broken a commandment. Okay? They are not bound by the laws until the girl turns 12, the boy turns 13. That doesn't mean, in the Orthodox world, that they're giving their kids bacon cheeseburgers, right? Because the principle where it says what, from 8 and 9 or 9 and 10 you do by hours, that principle will transfer to all the commandments, that they follow all the commandments as a form of education, right? That you still have a child follow all the mitzvot, so that when they do turn 12 or 13, they know the right thing to do. They know what's expected of them, and you're not setting them up to fail. Okay, does that make sense? And then, a couple of years before, they are obligated to follow the commandments, but it's not from the Torah. Right? It's a rabbinic obligation. Like when we were talking about Shabbat, and there are some things like, I told you about shaking out the tablecloth, right? I don't know exactly, but that one might be a rabbinic prohibition, not a Torah prohibition. right? That's kind of the difference between rabbinic and Torah. Does that make sense? Okay. So a few years before, they're obligated to follow the mitzvot, but not 100%. But starting at 12, and then at 13, 13 for boys, 12 for girls, they are fully bound by the commandments. Okay? And that really is the traditional bar bat mitzvah. And it has nothing to, it doesn't matter if you have a service, right? It doesn't matter if there's a party. You turn 12, you turn 13, and that's it. Now, probably before, and you see this Talmudically and over, it had more to do with physical signs, which is one reason why girls before boys, right? Girls hit puberty before boys do. But eventually that was replaced by just a number. Now, it's not just about obligation to perform the commandments. It's also about responsibility. And now we go to our next passage, the bottom paragraph on the page. Rabbi Pinchas, in the name of Rabbi Levi, said, Jacob and Esau, do we all know Jacob and Esau? Right? Jacob and Esau were the twin sons of Isaac and Rebekah. Esau was the older son. Jacob ended up receiving the birthright and the blessing. And Esau ends up being much more so in rabbinic text than biblical, but even biblically, right, the descendants of Esau become enemies. So Esau is viewed as wicked. Okay? Jacob and Esau were like a myrtle and a rose bush that were growing next to each other. When they grew up, Jacob gave its fragrance, but the other one, Esau, gave its thorns. All right, Jacob was good, Esau was bad. For 13 years, each went, now this is a midrash, okay? This is not something we read from the Torah. This is a rabbinic explanation, a story, that furthers what we have in the Torah, okay? For 13 years, each one went to school and came home from school. Then Jacob went to the house of study, while Esau went to the houses of idol worship, right? So it's like their father did everything that he could, but this one went one direction and this one went the other. Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Simeon said, parents are responsible for their children until they reach age 13. Then a parent shall say, blessed is God who has freed me from the responsibility of this world. And at a traditional bar mitzvah still today, the father will stand up and will literally go like this and say, Baruch shepachani mizeh. Right? Blessed is the one who's freed me of my obligation in this one. So not only is it obligation to follow the mitzvot, it's also responsibility for oneself traditionally. So the way that I explain it to the kids, and you know I'm not that creative, so I'll use the same one for you. I'll say, let's say you're out playing baseball in your yard, and you hit a ball, and you hit your neighbor's ox, and you kill your neighbor's ox. Okay? Now, even though it's an accident, we're still obligated to replace the ox. So if you're 11 years old, right, who is ultimately, now your parents may decide to make you work and pay for it, I don't know. But ultimately, according to Jewish law, who is responsible to replace the ox? The father. The father, right? But after that 13th birthday, who's responsible to replace the ox? The son, or the child, right? Now for a girl, everything is a little different. Traditionally, right, the girl remains more the parent's responsibility until she's married, when she becomes her husband's responsibility, but that's, right, different today. So really, textually, okay, in our text, this is bar and bat mitzvah. It has nothing to do with a service. It has nothing to do with a party, right? It still really should have nothing to do with a party, It's really about obligating